Okay, so welcome to LINK's LSAT series. And this is just a little sample of what we offer in our LSAT tutoring course. So, how to master strengthening versus weakening questions. And let's get right to it. So, logical reasoning, we find there are different styles of questions, and it's important to identify which question you're answering so you know kind of what the test is looking for. So how to master the strengthen versus the weakening questions. The first thing we want to do is identify them, but it's also important to understand why. And strengthen versus weakening questions are over 30% of the logical reasoning section. So we want to break those down. That's a big chunk of that section. So let's break them down and get some simple strategies in place so that you don't get lost and you can count that 30% as a win for you. Okay, so the first thing we want to look at is the stem. So as far as which the stem is going to identify, the question stem is going to identify for you whether you're dealing with a strengthening question or a weakening question. And then that allows you to better choose the correct answer choice. So here are some examples. So a strengthening stem, which of the following, if true, most strengthens the argument? Seems fairly obvious to me because we have the specific ask saying strengthens the argument. Whereas a weakening stem, again, similarly, will say which of the following, if true, most undermines the argument. So as we work through, making sure that you've got all the tools and strategies you need to be maximum have maximum success on the LSAT. One of the things we do at Link is to first, really build on your confidence of identifying the right question and the right answer. And that is a matter of breaking things down so it becomes very automatic for you. So I'm leading up to this flashcard tip that we've got at the bottom, making a deck with common stems, the question stems, so you instantly recognize what question type you're answering. And I know we like to really rush things and get to the end of, okay, but I've got the right answer. But really breaking this down and making that almost instinctual for you that you look at a question and know, okay, I'm looking for, this is a strengthening question, this is what I'm looking for, or this is a weakening question, and this is what I'm looking for. The LSAT exam is a test of endurance, and it actually is not an IQ test. It is completely skills based, and you can master it simply by understanding what it is that the test is looking to assess you on. And that's what's important to know. So that's where these flashcard opportunities to make a deck of weakening versus strengthening stems and going through them, that really does help to build that automatic process for you. Okay, so step two. So first we've identified it and we've looked at the question stem. Step two is to find the core. So identifying the conclusion or what the author is trying to prove. Identify the premise or what the evidence is that the author is giving you. And ask what's the gap between the premise and the conclusion. So you'll see down there where we've used a little mapping tool versus learning tool. It says use scratch paper for mapping. So mapping is it's a critical tool to use on the LSAT that really just helps you go, boom, here's the conclusion, here's the premise, and then therefore we now have the gap, right? We're almost using math here. Basically, it's algebra because what we're doing is we're saying, if I found the conclusion, I found the premise, the gap is what's in between there. So that helps you to map that out. And I would either use highlighters and a specific color. And one of the things that's super important is using this system over and over again as you answer the questions because it will become like an instinct to you and that will help you with your timing. So it's really these building blocks initially and these tools and using them repetitively so you become super strong in those tools that really tighten up your timing and help you with your success. So here's the second tool that we're bringing out, which is the mapping and using the conclusion, the premise, and the gap identification. So step three, your strategy. So correct answers close the gap and make the conclusion more likely. It often adds a missing link, new evidence, or confirms an assumption. So basically what you're doing is this a correct answer in a strengthening question makes it more likely, makes it more possible, makes it more accurate. It just gives more definition that yes, this is the theory that the author is presenting to you is right. So think of it as adding support beams under a bridge or making it a better answer. So much like the term strengthening, all you're doing is this the correct answer in a strengthening question really makes what the author has said more correct, more accurate. Step four, so in a weakening strategy, so we've got a weakening question. This is going to be, it's going to make sense. The correct answer widens the gap or makes the conclusion less likely, which often introduces an alternative explanation or undermines the assumption. So we've mastered in our tutoring class, one of the things we really work on is mastering what the assumption is. That really helps you to know kind of the right answer here. So think of it as removing the support beams from the bridge. So, you're kind of taking away in this way and saying, that maybe isn't the right thing. And of course, that lines up with weakening, right? So I don't think people need too much of a definition often on the difference between the weakening and the strengthening part, as much as they do on identifying the question stem accurately to know which question they're dealing with. So here's an example. So the argument that the author gives us is all the company's sales increased after a new ad campaign. Therefore, the ad campaign caused the sales to boost. So a strengthening answer, survey shows customers purchase because of the ads. A weakening answer, a competitor went out of business during that time. So the tool, we're going to write S for, link stronger, W, link weaker in your margin for faster focus. So that's two samples of something we could have found that would align with that argument to either be a strengthening or an answering, or sorry, a weakening. So some friendly tools that you can use to advance on this. Now, do remember as well that, of course, in our tutoring class, we go a lot deeper on this. We really make sure that these questions become, simple for you and easy to find. But some of the things we work into that as well to help you with your studying is your 30-second scan. If you're stuck, mark and skip. So basically, you've read the question. If it seems like, yep, this is one I can get, you're going to move on with it to get it done. If it's one you need to circle back to, it's a little more difficult because we've taken the time during our tutoring to identify the questions that, maybe are a little tougher, then you're going to mark it as one you're going to come back to and you're going to get the easier ones done. Active reading, circling, contrasting words. But however, now in our tutoring class, we have whole lists of words that help you to identify different types of questions, different types of question stems, and the important words that are going to contrast and tell you what you're dealing with. So that's important. It's a time saver. Movement breaks. It's important that you don't lock yourself in. Now, of course, during the actual exam, yes, you have to be locked in. But during studying, a studying marathon is not what's going to make you more successful on the LSAT. Think of the LSAT more like training for a marathon or maybe doing weight training at the gym. And we all know when you show up and do one session, we don't see the results, but several smaller sessions builds up, and that's what really makes you stronger. The LSAT is much like that. You need to learn the tools and the strategies. You need to apply them so they become, repetitive and well done, and you really learn them and become instinctual. And then that's what helps you. So this is a movement break that says stand and stretch after every 10 questions. No more than 10 questions I wouldn't even do 10 in a day. I would say 5, and then talking it out. So read the argument aloud or explain it to yourself keeps you focused and anchored in your studying. Setting small studying goals too. Like I'm going to do two questions in logical reasoning, and then I'm going to take a break and do 2 questions in reading comp. So there's lots more of these, but these are just a sampling of some tips that help. Okay, so some common traps to avoid. You want to be aware of these. So answers that are true but irrelevant, answers that restate a premise, extreme answers that go beyond the scope. So there's a quick test. Ask, does this directly affect the conclusion? If not, eliminate it. And usually when you always have 4 answer choices. Usually you'll find 2 of those are obviously wrong. And then you need to pick the best choice between the other 2. So remember, strengthening versus weakening questions don't have to be overwhelming. Spot the stem, find the gap, and remember strength Strengthening questions equal closing the gap. Weakening questions equal widening the gap. All right. If you want to do more guided practice of this, join us in our LSAT course. The link is in the description. And remember, we are here to keep it clear and obvious and make it simple for you as well as affordable. So I hope that this helped, and I hope that you'll join us in some of our tutoring classes.